Pradeep, welcome to the Stuff Backstage Pass. It's so wonderful to have you on the show.
It's my honor. Thanks for inviting me.
My absolute pleasure. I know that you're also running a panel, actually, that's going to take place after this recording.
Right.
Can you tell the audience a little bit about what that panel's about?
So the topic for the panel is co-founders, no drama, please. So basically,
is it ever no drama?
Yeah. There is a lot of drama between the co-founders, but that is what the talk is all about. You know, how do you mitigate the conflicts between the co-founders? How do you select the right co-founder? What challenges you face as a team when you present the company to the external world? A bunch of other things would be discussed on that particular panel, right?
I'll definitely pick your brains on that topic later on, but let's perhaps start with an introduction. So you are the co-founder of Trucker.
Right.
Can you share with the audience, what does Trucker do?
Okay. So Trucker is a digital truck aggregator. Very simplistically, we call ourselves as Uber for trucks. So it is a platform where a company who requires trucks or which requires trucks can come to the platform, request for trucks, and we provide them the trucks. Now we are an asset-light model where we don't own any of these trucks. So the model or the foundation is very similar to what Uber or Careem does in the cab market. But then this is a totally different industry. We are not into a B2C industry. It is a B2B industry. So basically we are working with large manufacturers, traders, ports, shipping lines, and a bunch of all those things. But it is very, very complex compared to a very cab business. In a single transaction for trucking, you know, there are different entities. So there would be a shipper who is shipping the goods. There is a consignee who is receiving the goods. There would be a vendor who owns the trucks. There is a driver who actually drives the trucks. Then there is Trucker, which is actually marrying all these people together into a single transaction. Then there would be custom clearance agencies, government agencies, a bunch of all these things come.
Sounds super complex.
to fulfill a single transaction basically in this industry.
So for a business that sounds so complex, let's say, that involves many stakeholders, I'm curious, how did you and your co-founder come up with the idea for Trucker?
Okay. So I'll give you a brief introduction about me and my co-founder. So we are two founders, Gaurav Biswas and myself, Pradeep. We are childhood friends, basically. So we were together since third grade in the same school. So basically, our parents moved to a city in India. We were the new kids in the school. So what happens when you're new kids? You know, all the other children already have friends and groups in the class. We were two new kids in the class.
That's so interesting.
So we just bonded together. Okay. And then we became best of the friends. We used to stay in the same neighborhood. We did a lot of things which we cannot tell openly in public when we were young. But yeah, that is how we are gelled together. Then I moved on to do my master's in IT. He moved on with his MBA. We just then, split. I mean, I was in India doing my own business. Gaurav moved to UAE. Before that, he was in Europe. He moved on to consulting sort of business. But then when he used to come back to our hometown, we used to meet for dinners or lunch along with the common friends. And this is the idea which came up on a dinner table. So we were having...
He came to you with the idea for Trucker?
No, it was just on the table. We were having dinner with a few of our common friends. One of our friends has a manufacturing industry. And during the entire dinner, he was calling his transport manager because he had a very urgent shipment to be made. And he was struggling to find trucks.
Buy a truck, okay. Because I was going to ask, and maybe we can delve into this after,
Correct.
Why trucks and not other means of transportation, but we'll get there.
Right.
Go on.
So he was struggling, and that is where we just joked around, why can't we have Uber for trucks, where you just click and you can have a truck at your location. That is where the idea started, basically. And I already was running an IT business at that time. I had an IT company with maybe 40, 50 developers with us. So next day we met again, and we just explored the idea a little bit. And that is how we just took a decision, okay, let's try doing this particular thing. As a matter of fact, we started in India. We failed miserably.
Why so?
So when we started in India, there were already two players who had already started this business.
Similar to what Trucker offers.
Similar to Trucker. They had raised funding, considerable amount of funding. Now you already have a couple of companies which have raised funding. It becomes very difficult for a third company to come in and raise funds, because most of the investors will still back the first in the business or the second in the business, right?
Fair.
So we burned a lot of our own money, and then we said, okay, it's not working out. Let's do something. Let's move to the UAE. So the stint for us in India was very, very small. It was like 7 or 8 months. And then we took a very quick decision. Okay, let's move to UAE. The reason why we came to UAE, because Gaurav was already in the UAE. His family was based out of UAE. We said, okay, we know this market a little bit. But with all the learnings which we had in our Indian startup, we brought it here.
And the market challenges are the same, both in India and the UAE. Is it perhaps something that I can assume to be a pain point everywhere around the world?
Yes. It may not be the same in Europe or the Western countries. They are already very digitized. They are very organized. To put in a perspective, in the logistics or the land freight business, the organized players in India or the Middle East are only consisting of 1%. So the entire land freight business, only 1% of this land freight business is catered by an organized sector.
You mentioned land freight. I'm very curious. How does that differ from transporting goods via sea or air?
Okay.
And why did you guys choose the business of land freighting?
So as we said, we wanted to do the trucking business. Now, if sea and air freight, it becomes a multimodal sort of a thing. So there is nothing just sea freight. So if you want to transport a goods from point A to point B, you will have a truck, you will have a ship or a plane, and then again on the other side you will have a truck. The reason why we chose only trucks is to start small. Now, I am not telling that we are starting sea freight or air freight. Neither I am denying right now. Right? But
Your
yes,
5-year, 10-year long-term plan, maybe.
it may, okay, we are starting our freight forwarding business as well, which would cater to the sea freight and the air freight as well. And we will start as soon as maybe in a month's time now. So we are not very far away from that.
The reason as well that I'm perhaps asking is the UAE at the end of the day is a very small country. And we do a lot of import. When I say we, the UAE does a lot of import-export beyond just through land transportation. And I know that you guys are international, meaning the trucker operates your trucks internationally, not just within the UAE. So I would imagine it makes sense as like the next step to gain a competitive advantage at least as well.
Right. The thing about sea freight and land freight, one of the biggest challenges, where do we optimize things in an industry? The sea freight and the air freight, they are run by big shipping lines or big airline companies. What, as a startup, will I optimize for them?
True.
Right? But the truck business is a very fragmented business. If you see the demographics of drivers or vendors in UAE, most of them are single owner drivers. So they own the truck and they drive the truck. So this is where, a lot of inefficiencies in the market are. They rely on brokers. The brokers are the guys, who are not very transparent. When a driver goes and asks for a load, they will say, oh, there is no load. And they will reduce the price for them. On the other side, for the shippers, they will say, okay, there is a lot of shortage, so the prices are high. So there is no visibility on the either parties because of these brokers. And that is where a startup like us can come in and give visibility and a very clean experience to the transporters as well as the shippers as well.
Interesting,
So there are inefficiencies, and that is where we can do something on that. Right?
What I also find interesting from the story you've shared so far of the journey of trucker is that the same idea, whether you're the first in the market or not the first in the market, makes a difference. So timing matters is the main takeaway, in addition to your business idea and your model and that type of thing.
Right.
So once you launched in Trucker in the UAE, did you find that all of a sudden the landscape changed in the sense that a lot of other digitized players wanted a piece of what you were building?
So when we started in UAE, I think it was 2016 is when we started in UAE. We were the first player. But then over a period of, last 6-7 years, we had seen so much competition which has come and gone. All right. There were at least, I can name 7 or 8 similar players who tried to come up during our time, but none of them could, gain any traction. One of the reason being obviously the funding. We were the first to raise some significant amount of funds. And once you raise some funds, it is very difficult for the second player. Yes, they may raise a little bit of a money. But then the follow-up rounds where you need to get to the institutional VC funds or anything, that is where, it becomes a challenge. And as you said, UAE or Saudi for that matter, the number of investors are limited. At least when we started, it was very limited at that time. Now, yes, you have a lot of global funds coming in. So it may be a little bit easier, but at that time, if you received fund, you are more or less done, because at that time I can name a few funds like MEVP, VAMDA, 500, and a bunch of others were there. But these were limited set of investors who had a mandate to invest in this.
And just for context, when you say back then, what year was
2016, 17?
Okay.
During that particular. Now you will be having a lot more investors. A lot of Western funds have a mandate to invest in the Middle East now, right?
So I'm wondering, perhaps something to share as an advice for an entrepreneur listening to this. How do you pitch to an investor, given that you are the first person in the industry doing what you're doing? Because yes, on one hand, you're the first mover, but on the other hand, you're pitching something moonshot that has not been proven yet.
Yeah. That is one interesting thing. Unless you are into a deep tech space, normally what the investors would see is if you have any peers, if not in this geography, somewhere across the world, right? So for us, the advantage was there were proven companies. If you see in US, we had Convoy. Obviously, Convoy went bust right now, a few. Then you had Uber Freight here. India or the Southeast Asian markets had companies like Blackbucks. China has the biggest truck aggregator in the world even today. They call it FTA. Europe had similar things like Senders and a bunch of all those things. So it was not something which was unique as a concept. Yes, every geography will have its own customization, its own flavors and everything. But as a concept, this was nothing new, basically. So it was not a big challenge for us to convince the investors that this could work. But yes, there would be a challenge if it is totally out of the box, idea.
Something really moonshot, let's say.
Something, yes.
So, Pradeep, you mentioned deep tech. So it wouldn't be a conversation about tech in the year 2024 without mentioning AI and how that is changing the way truckers, a tech business, is doing business this year.
So one of the things about technology for us is what we've realized is we do a lot of tech. But in the end, will that tech benefit the end user? Now, I may build a lot of interesting AI into my application. For me, the fundamental thing or the pain point for our users, if I talk about the supply side, his problems are very, very simple. He needs regular business and he needs regular payments. These are the only two things which he requires for him to be loyal to me. Everything else he doesn't care about. Now, yes, how is tech enabling? How is AI enabling this particular thing? So to give them business, if I automate how I am giving them the business, using AI. So I have 2 or 3 various players in a single transaction. One is the shipper, one is trucker, and then the transporter. Now, as of now, or even today, what we are working on, it is a very, very sometimes an operational heavy business. Now, to reduce the number of human handshakes in a transaction, and that is where the tech comes in. Now, it looks very simple to do this particular thing, but it's not as easy. You do require a lot of machine learning, a lot of algorithms to be put into this. Now, a simple example for us is pricing algorithm. Very simple. If we say it is obviously machine learning, and we can say there are standard algorithms like regressions and all those things to do that. But it's not as straightforward as that. Again, what happens in Ramadan? The rates come up, go down, I don't know. What happens when there is a problem at the border? What happens, for example, recently Saudi increased their fuel prices by 50%. How do I cater, or how do I take this in consideration and give my pricing?
So information from the outside world fed back into your machine.
Again, a simple thing like track and trace. People think, okay, to show a route from A to B, you use Google Maps. But trucks are not the same. No mapping solution gives a route which the truck takes. A truck has so many things inbuilt, like there is road restrictions. So Sheikh Zayed, you will never see a truck. But if you see a Google
I thought they're not
from...
allowed on
They're not
Sheikh
allowed on
Zayed.
Sheikh
Exactly.
Zayed,
Okay.
right? But if you say, okay, I want to go from here to Jabal Ali, it will take you through Sheikh Zayed.
True.
Google Map.
True,
So-
true.
So these are all the analytics or artificial intelligence or machine learnings you need to build into the system to efficiently operate the system. And nothing is going to work without that. Otherwise, you'll be just like a traditional player. And if you turn into a traditional player, somebody else will come and take you over. You become a dinosaur in this industry.
True. So you would need to constantly
Correct.
have a tech team that is sophisticated enough
There's no
to
doubt about
evolve,
that.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that.
Another thing I wanted to ask you about is, and it's really based on the spotlight on ESG in the last couple of years, and just a couple of months ago here in the UAE, we had the COP event. The business of being in freight and transportation contributes negatively to the climate quite significantly. What is Trucker doing in the space so that you could have, let's say, a better impact or less of an impact on the environment?
So Trucker is very much committed to the EV industry as of now. So as far as Trucker goes, we are bringing in a few pilot EV trucks, small to large vehicles, in the beginning of summer. We want to do
exciting.
some pilots here.
So in the next few months?
In the next few months.
Oh, interesting.
The reason
Okay.
why we want to bring them during the summer is to do a proper test of these vehicles during the...
When demand is low?
demand is low and even the temperature is high.
Oh, interesting.
Because
Okay.
the EVs, they behave differently during different climates. Normally, the other parts or during the summer is when, there would be a peak. It would reach 50 degrees or 60 degrees. I don't know, whatever it. Okay. And we want to see what would be the performance of the claimed range and what happens with these EV.
I have a clarification question, though. You said we are going to bring these EV trucks, but I thought Trucker's model was that you work with, so that you don't own the assets.
Correct.
That you work with others
Correct.
who own the trucks.
Correct.
So with the case of the EVs that you mentioned, is Trucker fitting?
No, Trucker is not planning to buy.
Okay.
Trucker is trying to do the pilots, get the OEMs, come here, prove that these EVs can be run in this particular geography. And that is, once that is done, then we go back to the transporters or all the big companies to start investing in the EVs. Trucker has no intention to buy its own assets as far as EVs goes. Okay. Yes, we do own a few trucks. There are reasons why we need to own trucks. You cannot work with large clients unless you own a certain number of trucks, because they have a pre-qualification when you have to, sign up for their tenders and everything. So we do own a few trucks.
Okay.
But as far as EV is concerned, we are not going to buy a lot of trucks. We are going to build a platform. We are going to facilitate. We are going to maybe get into a fintech where we finance those people to buy the EVs.
Oh, interesting.
Right? So
Okay.
there are endless...
Partnering with a fintech or having your own kind of credit product? Again, I'm
Having
touching on your roadmap.
So having our own fintech offering, basically.
Very interesting.
So we cannot stop at what we are doing right now. We need to keep on expanding. One of the things I already said, we are getting into freight forwarding business, the air and land freight. There are a bunch of other things also which we are doing. We do also have digitized our drivers' payment. So nobody or many people don't know here that the drivers deal in cash in this geography. The reason is they don't even have a bank account. So
that's a bit of like an embedded financial
Correct.
inclusion.
So now we have
model.
our own wallet. We give them debit cards. We deposit money into their cards. And then it can go forward from there. It may be getting into international remittances. It may be getting into some cashback. A bunch of all other things are in the pipeline or can be done.
Interesting.
So again, one thing you said that UAE is a very small market for us, right? So
Small relatively compared to
put it
India
into
where you started.
perspective, Trucker operates in 11 countries. So we are not only in UAE. Even when we started in UAE, majority of our business was cross-border. So it was like trucks from here to Saudi, to Oman, to Kuwait, Bahrain, the long-haul trucks. Now we are in 11 countries. So we cover all the GCC countries. We are in Africa. We are in Egypt. We are in Turkey. We are in Poland. We are in Kazakhstan. We will pretty soon start a few other countries in the
Interesting.
CIS.
Poland's pretty far. Oh, wow. Pradeep, I actually want to go back to your relationship with your co-founder. I found the story of you guys knowing each other since you were not even teenagers, before that, children, quite interesting.
Correct.
Do you guys get along?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
no
yeah.
quabbles at all?
We do fight a lot.
Okay.
But the fighting is always behind the closed doors.
Okay.
So if somebody sees us fighting, people will say, okay, are these guys, these people are on the verge of divorce right now. But in the end, at the end of the day, I know even after whatever fights we have or fights we had, he will never harm me. He knows the same thing about me because we are childhood friends. When you are two people working in an organization, you are bound to have difference of opinions. You are bound to get angry. You are bound to shout at each other. But that doesn't stop us because there is trust, there is honesty with each other for us. His wife, my wife are the best of the friends. His parents, my parents know each
And
other.
do you have children who are also friends, or?
Actually, if you see, there is a very good symmetry between mine and his family. So I am 1 month elder to Gaurav. My wife is 1 month older to his wife. My daughter is 1 month elder to his daughter.
Oh, wow.
So
Very
it's
symmetrical.
very symmetrical for us as such. So yes, we do have a lot of fights, but that doesn't mean
It's like family feuding, I think, the way
Correct.
you describe it. Like,
Correct.
I would fight with my family,
Correct.
but your family. So the family
at
members
the
are
end
going to
of the
walk
day,
away.
you know that they are not going to go backstab you, right?
True. But I am curious because what you and Gaurav have is very unique, and not all
Founders.
entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs listening to this have such a relationship with their co-founders. Given what you know running a business with someone, what are some practical tips you can give for entrepreneurs about navigating challenging times and having difficult conversations with a co-founder?
So the first thing is, we should not rush into finding a co-founder. If at all you didn't start together and at a later stage you want to get somebody or you want to, don't rush into getting a co-founder. You first start informally working with that people. It is just like, courtship before marriage. People know
You
each
date.
other. You date. So that you know what the other person is thinking about. Yeah.
But in a business context, does that mean work together before incorporating the company? Or what does that practically mean?
It can happen like that also.
Okay.
Because once you want a certain person to come on board or become your partner, you already have a little bit of a trust factor on that particular person, right? Otherwise, to even bring a co-founder or a business partner onto the business and you don't want to share the business idea with him, thinking that he's going to steal your business idea and start it on his own, then there is no point in having such a person on board if you don't even have such a trust factor, right? So you already have shared the idea. You have to sell your company for the other person to join your company, right? So don't just rush into getting a co-founder. Just have a few sessions, talk to him, be very open and honest. The second thing is the vision and the mission needs to match for this. And one of the most important thing you need to have in a co-founder is the emotional quotient. The startup industries are like a roller coaster. You will have so many challenges. You will have so many days where you would be thinking, why am I doing this? I can just get a cushy job somewhere, have a good life, and enjoy. You will be getting depressed a lot of times. And that is where, you need your co-founder, your partners to bring you out of that particular thing. And you need to do the same to the other person as well. So the emotional...
Like a marriage.
It's like a marriage. Yeah, so the emotional quotient is very, very important. You cannot work with a person who is, very snappy. Even if he's snappy is not a problem because, people can snap. But taking decisions when they are down, that is very, very dangerous in this industry because there will be challenges. You may feel lonely, you may feel very down, but that doesn't mean you just give up on that thing. So that is one of the biggest thing you need to look for in your co-founder. Obviously, the agreements, the founder agreements and everything have to be in place right from the day one. Or once you have formalized your relation or you guys decide that you want to work together, you need to get it on the paper. You should not delay that any longer.
Speaking of putting pen to paper, I have a sensitive question, let's say. How do you split equity with a co-founder?
So It depends. When do you get a co-founder? There are multiple instances when you start a business and then get a co-founder later.
True.
There are many businesses like ours where we started together, right? Now, what are each of the people bringing to the table? In many instances, what happens is one of the co-founder is bringing the equity and himself, at least for the bootstrap thing. And the other founder is just getting in with a tech knowledge or some other knowledge for that. In that case, majority of the risk or most of the risk is taken by the guy who's putting in the equity as well as his time.
But there's an opportunity cost for time.
Yes. But both are giving in the time, right?
True.
But he's putting in a lot of money as a bootstrap for this company also. So there is no fixed formula to, split the equity for that. But in the end, we do know in this industry, when you start getting investments, your stock is going to get diluted. We need to make sure as founders, when you reach to series B, C, D, none of the founders are left with so minuscule shares in the company where, they no longer care, because by 4 or 5 years, their shares would have been vested.
Can I ask for your personal advice on how far down, as a co-founder yourself, would you expect your shares to be diluted to? Or a general rule of thumb, let's say.
So ideally, the founders should be owning the company at least 30 to 40% in the first 5 years. The founding team.
Yeah.
Okay. They should be at least holding 30 to 40% of the company shares, at least for the first 5-6 rounds. Post that particular thing, normally if a company survives for 5-6 rounds, they normally get acquired or they file for an IPO. At that, once you are an IPO, it no longer matters what is your stake. It is the share stock value which will be mattering mostly for that.
Inshallah IPO. Cool. Pradeep, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for being on the show. I think that it was very insightful to learn about Trucker, and I do hope that a lot of the aspiring entrepreneurs listening to this, whether they catch you at your panel later in the festival or tuning into this episode, learn a lot about what it takes to be one of the most funded startups in the region.
Thank you. Thanks. It was an honor. And for all the entrepreneurs, it will not be easy. Just burn your bridges to the safety. I'm not telling burn your bridges with your people, but if you want to take a plunge into the startup business, don't have a safety net. Just
go
dive into it.
Thank you, Pradeep. Thank you.